Does transferring to the FBS increase an FCS player's draft stock? This is an article by Sam Herder. You guys can go check it out on herosports.com. The title is actually, Does Transferring to the FBS Increase an FCS Player's Draft Stock? Please go check it out. Amazing article by Sam Herder. We're going to talk about it a little bit. So he was talking, basically he brought up some athletes, and this is what the metric is judged by. An FCS player transfers to the FBS. He plays 1 year in the FBS and then goes to the NFL. He's deemed as an FCS draftee. Even though he got drafted from the FBS, 1 year in the FCS is good enough to deem him as an FCS draftee, which I think is fair. Now, 2 years in the FBS, we can't count you as an FCS player anymore because, you've been there for 2 years. One person he brought up who's supposed to be a first-round draft pick this year was Jared Verse, looks to be a 2024 first-round draft pick. He played 2 seasons at Albany before starring at Florida State in 2022 and 2023. He will not be counted as a draft pick from FCS. And another example, in 2023 draft, Kobe Turner was selected in the 3rd round. He spent 5 years at Richmond before transferring to Wake Forest in 2022 for his final year. I think it's more fair to count him as a draft pick from Richmond and the FCS, which I agree. Another perfect example, Samori Toure. We had COVID in 2020. He transferred that 2020 winter and ended up committing to Nebraska either late 2020, like late December, or it might have been the first couple weeks in January in that 2021 year. But he transferred to Nebraska, ended up getting drafted to the Packers the next year, 2022 draft. Based on Sam Herder's metric, we would count him as an FCS player in the draft. Well, basically what Sam Herder was saying in this article was that if you look at the numbers, if you look at how you judge FCS to FBS transfers, the numbers don't really back up players bettering their draft stock by going to the FBS, which I think is very interesting because I'm a player who had an opportunity to transfer to the FBS, had an opportunity to go up during COVID when things were shut down. That was something that was floated out in front of me and something I could have jumped on. Ultimately decided to stay, but I think that is the discussion with a lot of FCS players, and I think that's what a lot of scouts tell players. I know for a fact that is what scouts tell players. I know people talk about that because that is something I was told. I was told before, if you go up to the FBS level, you can better your stock, you can better your draft stock. Teams don't think the FCS competition is very, very, very good. People judge the FCS competition differently than they judge FBS competition, which I do think is a fair assessment. But it's basically the way people talk about it within the scouting realm and within the NFL preparedness realm, like the NFL draft realm. They talk about it as if you're coming from the FCS, they're going to spit on your film. But if you're coming from the FCS, they're going to look at your film. But basically what Sam Herder, and this is why I want you guys to go look at this article because I think it was really amazing. When you look at the numbers don't back up that going to the FBS betters your draft stock. Because if you look at where some of the guys who went up from the FCS to FBS were drafted, he had some more numbers, and I want to read them off to you because some of these numbers were really, really informational. He talked about how, you look at some of the people who moved up from the FCS to FBS and their draft stock, like nothing really changed. There were more than 300 FCS to FBS transfers to the 2023 season. 0 of them are ranked in Draft Scout's top 360 prospects for the 224 draft. So that means 300 FCS to FBS transfers for the 2023 season. None of them are in the top 360 draft picks of the draft. There are a few FCS to FBS transfers from earlier years in Draft Scout's top 360. Jared Verse, who is not counted because he spent 2 years at the FCS, so he's not going to be counted. Malik Mustafa was a 2021 transfer from Richmond to Wake Forest. Tanner McLachlan was a 2022 transfer from Southern Utah to Arizona, and Prince Pines was a 2022 transfer from Sam Houston to Tulane. So there are 22 FCS players on Draft Scout's top 360, 0 2023 FCS to FBS transfers who would be counted as draft picks from the FCS, and 4 FCS to FBS transfers from earlier years who won't be counted. So basically what I'm kind of seeing is like, based off these numbers, this small sample size that we have, there are 22 players on Draft Scout's top 360. 0 are 2023 FCS to FBS transfers. But you have 4 who are FCS to FBS transfers from earlier years. So maybe some of these numbers are showing that if you transfer earlier, you might benefit from the FBS development, and that might help your draft stock. But I think if you transfer for 1 year, because you're only going to get a winter and a summer with an FBS school. So I don't know how much change can happen. You put in that work, a lot of change can happen. But I don't know at this point in your development, when you're 21, 22, 23 years old, how much improvement you're going to see at the college level, getting college level development that you're going to see from 1 year to the next, from FCS to FBS. I think, but I mean, there's 4 players from FCS to FBS transfers from earlier years that are on Draft Scout's top 360 this year. So judging off that, I think it tells you that maybe a couple of years of development can potentially help your draft stock, but I don't think 1 year from FCS to FBS can help your draft stock. Now, you might relate it back to, I'm trying to think of some of the FCS to FBS transfers we've seen who might have helped their draft stock, there doesn't seem to be any examples of guys who did help their draft stock. It only seems to be examples of guys who really didn't do anything to their draft stock. Really, I just bring this up because I wanted to know you guys' thoughts. I thought that was very interesting. I thought it was a great article from Sam Herder. One more quote that I got. 2 more quotes, actually. However, I do think it's important to show that transferring to the FBS has helped a very small pocket of players in their draft stock. So that's what I've talked about. Basically, what Sam Herder was trying to do, he asked the question, does transferring FCS to FBS help your draft stock? And once you look at some of the numbers, once you go down some of the stats and some of where players have went, where they've been drafted, it doesn't show that it really does help your draft stock. And this is the final quote. 85% of FCS all-conference players with eligibility remaining returned to their team in 2023. Now, he put that on there because a lot of people like to say the FCS is becoming the new JUCO, that people are just poaching players from the FCS to bring up to FBS like they used to do to JUCO. But that was what JUCO was made for, so I don't know why people are calling it the new JUCO, but I get why people are calling it the new JUCO, because JUCO was made for players to develop for 2 years and then go up to a higher level of football. People are basically saying that's what the FCS is. Get you some development, 2-3 years, get into a college football program, play some high level of college football, then we're going to come grab you and come up to the FBS. I know in the transfer portal NIL era, it seems like that, but based off the statistics and the numbers, 85% of all FCS all-conference players with eligibility remaining returned to their team in 2023. Now, one might say, how many good players weren't all-conference? I'd say probably a small amount. But if you're looking at all the talent in the FCS, 15% of players leaving, all conference players leaving the division, I don't think is very hurtful for the FCS. Obviously, it hurts to see some of your best players leave. Giovanni McCoy, Reese Poffenberger, Max Brosmer. Just some of the top guys I can think of off the top of my head that have transferred. There's a litany of other players that have transferred. But, it's tough. It's tough. I think it's very interesting that, these numbers do show that you're not bettering your draft stock just by transferring to an FBS school, because I think that's the conversation a lot of times with some of these players is like, I think that's why a lot of these players leave, and I think that's why Sam Herder's article is so amazing, because I've been on the other side of that. I understand what players are being told. You're going to better your draft stock being transferring to a better school. The numbers don't really back that up. If you read Sam Herder's article and you look at some of the things he was talking about, the numbers don't really back up you transferring is going to better your draft stock. So I think that gives some great clarity and some great transparency for some of these players when you look at this and see that I'm thinking about transferring, I'm thinking about going up to another level. Well, you can do that, but the numbers don't really back up that it's going to help your draft stock. There was more quotes, and this is why I want you guys to go read the article. I'll keep saying it. This is why I want you guys to go read the article, because there was another quote talking about how about 50% of the players who transferred from FCS to FBS got half or a lot. That's why I want to read it. That's why I want to read it to you guys. I still hope you guys go read this article, but I'm going to read this quote from an earlier article I did on how 2023 FCS to FBS transfers performed. Go look at that as well. Only 38% of the transfers started at least half of their games played at their new school. So, I know a perfect example of this, and I'm not trying to bash this guy, but D'Angelo Wilson in 2019, amazing season for Austin Peay. He had Samori in 2019 had 1495. D'Angelo Wilson was the only player who had more yards than him. He had 15 something, a stupid amount of touchdowns, a stupid amount of receptions. He had an amazing year. He was primed to be the best receiver returning in the FCS. Obviously we know COVID happened, so all of that influenced people's decisions to transfer. But along those lines, he transferred to Western Carolina. Um, he transferred to Western Carolina, who was a school that passed the ball a lot. They might have had Bailey Zappi at the time that he was there too. They also had a lot of good receivers there at the time as well, so that might have weighed into him not playing. I don't know right now if he got hurt or not. I don't think he got hurt. Somebody correct me in the comments if you know about this story. D'Angelo Wilson, best receiver in the FCS in 2019, transfers to Austin Peay. 2021, barely sees the field, and I don't even know what he's doing now, but he barely saw the field in 2021, and it just broke my heart because I saw dude's stats, I saw dude's numbers, saw what he was doing at Austin Peay. I think they were in the OVC at that time. I saw how he was terrorizing that conference, and then to see him move up to the FBS where he had a made situation. Now I don't know if they had fired their coach. I don't know what the coaching situation had happened. I don't know what played into him transferring, but I know what I saw when he got to Western Carolina or Western Kentucky. I know what I saw when he got to Western Kentucky, and it wasn't pretty. They didn't play him like that, and it just sucked to see, and I wanted better for him, and it would have been amazing if he would have stayed at the FCS level because he would have been a star. Now, like I'm saying, I don't know what his quarterback situation had happened at Austin Peay. I don't know what his coaching situation had happened at Austin Peay. I don't know what led him to leave Austin Peay. I know it seemed like on the outside looking in, he had a good situation, and he left that and ended up not getting requisite playing time at Western Carolina. Now it goes further. Sam Herder goes further in his article. And of those 2023 transfers who were 2022 FCS All-Conference players, only about 50 started at least half of their games played at their new school. So based off everything I've read in this article that you guys need to go read, transferring to an FBS school is not a guarantee that you are going to help your draft stock. It's honestly most likely not going to do anything to your draft stock besides just keep it the same, besides maybe elevate it a little bit. They have more film on you against better competition, but based on the numbers, and I'm basing this off the numbers, I'm not basing it off of what we see every day, like Jared Verse, supposed to be a first rounder this year, was an FCS guy, but he spent 2 years at the FBS. So basically what Sam Herder is talking about is, does FCS to FBS transferring help your draft stock? I think the consensus answer from this article is yes, it can help your draft stock, but it seems that multiple years at the FBS level will help your draft stock. I think 1 year from FCS to FBS cannot help your draft stock. You guys let me know in the comments what you think about that. I know it was a long-winded answer. I was really interested in this article. Once again, I'll tell you guys one more time, please go read this article by Sam Herder. It was a great article that he put together. He does a really good job covering the FCS, and I'm sure all you guys who are watching this know about Sam Herder. He's amazing. Go read that, and we